Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another piece of my vacation series of videos that I have on my channel. If you've been watching me for a little while, you know that I've gone on 2 cruises in the past 2 years and have also visited Disney World in that time frame, and we have another Disney trip planned this year. In recent years, I've just kind of been going on more vacations than I did when I was younger, so because of that, I have quite a few videos on my channel focused on cruising and Disney. So if you guys are interested, those will all be linked down below. There's also a playlist on my channel, as I said, so if you're interested in like something specific, go looking for it. I really love making these videos about vacations. I just love going on vacation, I love going on cruises, and I love to talk about it. So today's video is going to be another cruise related video. And in this one, I'm going to compare and contrast the 2 cruises that we went on, the first in 2016 and the last in 2017. And this is going to be kind of like a guide for people that maybe are planning a cruise and don't know the difference between certain ships and certain lengths of cruises and different things like that. I know that for me, when we first started cruising with Royal Caribbean, I had never cruised with them personally. Brandon had, so he had a little bit more knowledge than I did, but since we've done 2 cruises with them so close together and they were so different, I thought that this might be kind of a helpful guide for people. Disclaimer, I am not a travel channel. I have not been on a gazillion cruises like some of the other people here on YouTube, so if you're looking for like a really professional person to tell you their advice, go ahead and look for that by all means. I'm not a professional. I'm kind of like a reviewer, and I'm gonna give you guys my honest opinions about both cruises and hope that it's helpful for somebody. I've broken down the video into a few different segments, so if you're interested in one specific thing, you can go check those out. I will timestamp them in the info below, but for reference, the segments are going to be ship size and setup, activities on board, ports of call, number of days that you're cruising, and then at the end I'll do an overall which cruise was better kind of wrap up. So again, if you're interested in one specific thing, go check that out down below. Otherwise, let's just get right into it, which is the first category of ship size and setup. The 2 cruises that I'm going to be comparing are the Oasis of the Seas and the Enchantment of the Seas, both which are Royal Caribbean ships. I'm going to put the ship stats up on the screen somewhere. Maybe it'll have its own title screen. I haven't pre-looked up the size and tonnage and everything of each boat, but I'm going to do that in post and put that in for you so that you can see before I start talking about each boat. So without further ado, we are going to start with Oasis of the Seas. So Oasis was the ship that we went on in 2016. It was a fairly newer boat for their line, and as you guys might know if you've done a little bit of research, the Oasis class is the class of their largest cruise ships. They are enormous. They are like floating cities. And I was obsessed for a long time with going on an Oasis class ship, and so I was super excited to go on it, and hadn't been on a cruise in many years, so this was kind of like starting off again with a bang. So I'm gonna start with the ship size. Again, like I just said, the Oasis is massive. It holds, I think, like 6,000 people, which is enormous. That is a huge ship. Something that I noticed about the Oasis is that it is so large that it does take you a long time to get places. You do have to kind of schedule things out and allot for time walking to different locations on the ship. For instance, I mean the fact that we had a room at the front of the Oasis, and if we were going to an event at the back of the Oasis, it took us roughly 10 minutes to get there, and that's not an exaggeration, that is true. It is huge. It's a huge ship, and just to navigate the whole thing, it does take time. If you're an elderly person or somebody that doesn't do well walking far distances, it might not be the ship for you, or you might want to get a room that's kind of central on the ship so that you can go equal distances getting different places from your room. But yeah, we found ourselves a lot of the time trying to go places and saying, oh, we're at the front of the boat and it's at the back of the boat, or oh, we're at the back of the boat, we need to get to the front of the boat, because it was just so much extra time to get there. Moving on to the ship's setup, it is one of their newer ships, so it does have the kind of mall-esque feel in the very center of it, which is called the Promenade, I believe, where there are shopping areas and restaurants and things off of it, and it's normally very beautiful and has a glass ceiling, and they do entertaining in there, they do shopping, food, all that stuff, and so that is kind of like the main hub in the middle of the ship. The Oasis class also has a lot of entertainment venues. There is a full-scale aqua theater on the back of the ship. Those are kind of like the distinguishing pieces. That's how you know it's an Oasis class ship, when you see that theater on the back. It is open top, it is gorgeous, and they do high diving water shows on that ship. We unfortunately couldn't see it because there was high winds when we were on our cruise, and they did not have the high diving because the water level in the pool was too rocky and rapidly changing for people to dive into from however tall it is. I think it's like 200 feet, it's crazy. So we didn't get to see that show, but we've heard it's amazing. So they have that venue, they have the theater, they have the ice skating rink, which also doubles as like a game show place. That was really cool. And of course there's your regular bars and lounges. There's a zillion places to go on the boat. There's also something very, very characteristic that jumps out at you about these ships, and that is Central Park, which is also in the center of the ship, and you do feel like you've stepped into a park in the middle of a busy city. There's beautiful boutique shops along it, there's little eateries, there's like bars, places that you can sit and you can feel like you're just hanging out outdoors in a city somewhere. There are rooms lining the sides of Central Park so that you feel almost like there's apartment buildings all around you. It's really, really cool. It's such a cool space. I didn't feel at first that I was going to love it as much as I did, but at night, especially when the stars are overhead, it is open top, it's gorgeous. It's amazing. So we're now going to move on to Enchantment of the Seas, and I'll put the specs of that ship up on the screen now. So we went on the Enchantment in November of 2017, so it was fairly recent, and I'll start with the fact that the ship is older compared to the Oasis class. The ship was released, I believe, in the late 90s. It's like 20 years old, which would put it in the 90s. It did have a significant overhaul to it recently where they added like a midsection to the ship, so it is longer than it used to be, and they did do a lot of different refurbishments and updates, so you don't really feel like you're on an outdated boat. The size of the ship is considerably smaller than the Oasis. I believe it holds around 3,000 people, so half the amount of people. However, I find that when I'm standing next to any kind of cruise ship, it does feel big. So even though in pictures it looks so much considerably smaller, it is a large boat. You get on it, you don't feel like you're moving. It still has, you know, all those perks of a cruise ship. It's just not their Oasis class. A lot of people in reviews that I read said, oh, you know, the ship is showing wear and tear. I didn't feel that. I felt that everything was very well kept. It was very clean. The venues were all really, really nice and luxurious, and the decor is very similar to that of their other ships, so there were pieces and elements in it that reminded me of Oasis. So I did not find any problems with the decor and feel of the boat. In regard to the setup of the ship, it is set up differently than the newer ships. This one still has the classic atrium center to it, with the elevators going up and down, the glass elevators, and there are multiple staircases around, and there's like a piano at the bottom. It's much smaller, it's much more intimate feeling, and that's the middle of the ship, and then on either end you've got different lounges and venues, and the dining room obviously, but it's a very classic setup. If you've been on an older cruise ship that's like pre-2010, you know what I mean. It's a very classic setup compared to what they have now, especially on Royal Caribbean. There are obviously less venues for entertaining, but there were still quite a few. There's more lounge style venues. They do have a big theater though, it is full scale. Nothing was really scaled down, even though the ship was considered smaller. There was just less of everything, and that is something that we found and we were actually okay with, because this was a shorter cruise anyway, and I'll get to that later, but we weren't really on the ship as much as we were on Oasis, so it didn't really bother us. We're now going to move over to activities on board, and I'm going to revert back to the Oasis, and I'm just going to tell you about some of the things that they had on board for us. They have the surf simulator machines on the back of the ship. There are 2 of them. We did try those out. There's a zip line, there is mini golf, they have several pools, they have the high diving show, there's a carousel on what they call the boardwalk, which is in the back, also near the water show. They have all the classic Broadway style shows, and there are game shows on a very large scale there because they're held in the ice skating rink, and speaking of that, there's ice skating. So tons and tons to do on these ships. I definitely didn't get it all. I mean, they have arcades and kids things and all kinds of stuff. I didn't get it all by any means. The one thing that the Oasis doesn't have is a water slide, which their newer Oasis class ships do have water slides. But that did surprise me that they didn't have one on this ship. It just felt like it should have everything. But other than that, there was endless amounts of things to do, which was great because we were on the ship more often than on our second cruise. So we never really ran out of things to do. The only kind of downside to it is that there are so many people on the ship that it can be kind of a long wait sometimes. For instance, I think each waited like an hour to get onto the surf machine, and then you only have like a few minutes on it. So it's all up to you whether you want to like wait for these things or, you know, do them when people are at port, depending on what you want to do. You do have to kind of plan things out. Oh, hi. Moving on to Enchantment, activities on board, there was significantly less. Enchantment does have a rock wall, so does Oasis. I think I forgot to mention that. They have a rock wall, multiple pools, there is a theater, so there's a venue in there, there's a casino, per usual on every single cruise ship that you'll ever go on. There's always a casino, I feel like. There are these bungee trampoline things that they have, I believe at the front of the ship, that we actually never even looked at because they were never open. So again, that was just a few things that they had. There's not a whole ton on the smaller ships, but they are adding to them and refurbishing them slowly over time, and so I'm sure Enchantment will eventually get a water slide and things like that. They also have the big movie screen over the pool, which is nice, so at night they'll play different movies, so that's something cool that you can do at night. But again, I'm gonna get to the duration of the cruise a little bit later in the video. I think it might be, yeah, it's a little bit later in the video, and we'll talk about why you need less activities on the smaller ship than you do on the bigger ship. For ports of call, we went on 2 kind of different routes for each cruise. The first cruise on Oasis went Eastern Caribbean, and we went to Nassau, Bahamas, St. Thomas, and St. Martin. I'm gonna just talk a little bit about what we did at each port of call very briefly, and then kind of give you my opinion of each port. So Nassau was our first port of call for Oasis, and what we did was we went to Junkanoo Beach, which is the kind of public beach that's down the road from the port, and then we went to the Pirate Museum and shopped a little bit, and then we got on the ship. We had kind of a half day in Nassau that day. We left at, I believe, like 4. It might have been a little bit earlier than that. It might have been 2. So we knew that we didn't have that much time. We didn't want to go and do something extravagant, and so we just went to the public beach, which wasn't the best thing ever. I've heard a lot of people say they love Junkanoo Beach, but I personally didn't find it to be that great. I found the rentals to be very, very expensive. So we didn't rent anything. We kind of just sat on the beach and hung out. I remember the water being really rough, and there was quite a drop off, and it was all coral, so it was a little bit rough. We didn't spend too much time there. We ended up going to the Pirate Museum, which I think was $14 a person, and that was really cool, and it was air conditioned, so that was a plus. I highly suggest going to the Pirate Museum if you're just shopping around in the little town. It's a fairly good port for shopping, but I wasn't there to shop. I was there to get a tan and drink cocktails. So what we ended up doing was going back to the ship for Oasis, and we ended up sitting by the pool for the rest of the day until we left Nassau. Our second port of call was St. Thomas, and I had been there previously on another cruise. We took a taxi thing over to Magens Bay, and Magens Bay is one of the most beautiful beaches ever. Our third port of call was St. Martin, and we took the taxi shuttle thing over the water to the, it was like, I think like the main little town across the way. You'll see when you're in port, we were on the Phillipsburg side of the island. And so we ended up at the little beach literally right next to the dock where you pull up in the taxi. We rented beach chairs and we got complimentary drinks and something else, food I think, all for like $25. It was super duper cheap. It was actually the best deal that we got the entire cruise. We also got Wi-Fi, which was really cool. The beach there was not great. It was very rough. There was a really strong undertow because we were near the dock, and I literally could feel myself getting pulled out in the rip current. There was also like trash on the beach in places, and there was a block of wood with a rusted nail sticking out of it, which was really scary. Moving on to Enchantment, our ports of call were Nassau, Coco Cay, and what was that third one? Key West. Sorry, Key West. Two of which I had never been to. Had never been to Coco Cay, and I've never been to Key West. Nassau, obviously, you just heard me talk about in the Oasis cruise story. However, this time around when we went to Nassau, we actually went to Atlantis. And if you have a full day in Nassau, and you have Atlantis as an excursion option, I highly recommend it. We each paid, I'll be transparent, we paid like $150 a person, I think, to have the run of Atlantis for the entire day, including Aqua Adventure, which is their water park. So we had access to the water park, we had access to their aquarium, this thing called the Dig, which is like going underneath where all of the tanks are, you could see all the fish. We had access to all the beaches, the casino, all day long. We were there from 9:30 in the morning until roughly 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was amazing. I loved it. It is so worth your money. So definitely check out Atlantis if you're in Nassau. I highly suggest it. If we ever go back to Nassau, I think like I'm gonna have to go to Atlantis. Like now that I've done it once, I just have to go again. Our second port of call was Coco Cay, which is Royal Caribbean's private island, and they go here quite often on a lot of their itineraries, so it's pretty common. Coco Cay was amazing. It was very unexpected. I did not think I was going to love the Coco Cay day as much as I did. It was my absolute favorite day of the entire cruise. You do get tendered in on a smaller boat because there's no dock at Coco Cay yet. They are building one, and they're actually refurbishing the entire island. If you go on Royal Caribbean's Instagram, you'll see all of the updates that they're making. It's insane. I can't wait to go there in the future. But for right now, it is kind of like a little straw market, and there are buildings with different excursions in them that you can sign up for. That's what we did. Was we snorkeled for, I think it was $40 a person, and you had the gear all day long. You could snorkel whenever you wanted. It's a gorgeous island, and I'd go back any day. Any single day of the week. Our last port of call for Enchantment was Key West, and obviously that's in Florida, in the Florida Keys, and I was more excited about this port than I originally was for Coco Cay, and this ended up being our most disappointing port. Some people love Key West. I personally grew up in a very touristy area of Maine near the beach, and that's where I felt it was. It just felt so touristy, so gimmicky. I was just disappointed. If I go back there, I would definitely do an excursion because we actually opted to go out and shop and walk around. We went to the Hard Rock Cafe and we went to Fat Tuesday, and that was it. And then we went back to the boat because it was just very touristy. I had people jumping at me in the street trying to get me to buy things, trying to pull me into stores, and that's just not relaxing to me. So that was a disappointment. I don't want to deter people from going to Key West because their whole lives are tourist industry related. So I don't want to discourage people, I just didn't find it, for me, it was not the best. If you want to bar hop, it's an amazing place to go. Now we're gonna look at the number of days of each cruise. For Oasis, we did an 8-day, 7-night cruise to the Eastern Caribbean, which kind of brings this full circle as to the amount of activities you have on board, why you need all of this stuff, because we did have, I believe, 2 sea days while we were traveling. And on the sea days, yes, you can sit by the pool all day, but not everybody wants to do that, so they do have a very large variety of things. The 7-day cruise is great. I would definitely do another, 8 day. I would definitely do another one, but it can get a little bit old. I think that for me, eating on the ship for all of those days, I did get really sick of the food, and I felt the quality of the food wasn't great. I don't know if it's because of the amount of people on the ship, but it just got really old. The food was all the same, like all the time. So that wasn't the best. But otherwise, you know, a 7 or 8 day vacation is a really good length of time. And so we were away for a while and we did feel very refreshed when we returned. So that was great. Enchantment was a 5-day, 4-night cruise. So it was considerably shorter, but it didn't feel shorter. And why I think it didn't feel shorter was because we were constantly doing something. We were constantly at a port of call doing something on the ship. They had us going. There was events back to back. There was shows back to back that we just wanted to get everything in, because you do know you have a shorter amount of time to do like the same amount of stuff. And so I thought that the shorter cruise we actually got more out of, because we weren't just sitting around on a sea day. We didn't have a sea day. So just because it was shorter, it didn't necessarily feel that way, but for some people it might. So that's just comparing and contrasting the two lengths of the cruises. I know that they're both really common lengths. Yeah, I didn't really feel much of a difference between the two lengths. So the final question of the video is, overall, which was better? And this is completely opinion based. I don't want this to sway your decisions in your cruising. Like, please don't say, oh, I'm not doing this ship because she told me not to. No. This is my total opinion, how I felt, what my preferences are. I personally enjoyed our Enchantment of the Seas cruise better than I did on the Oasis ship. It was a total shock to me. I did not think I was going to love it as much as I did, but Enchantment was amazing. And they do these great getaway cruises that are 3, 4, 5 days, which is what we did, and I came back from that cruise just so happy, feeling so refreshed and just fulfilled, and feeling like we had just done so much, even though it was a shorter period of time, just feeling like we got the most out of our cruise vacation. On Oasis, it was amazing. The ship is incredible. I did feel fulfilled coming home, but I did at the same time feel a little bit drained. Just that we didn't fit everything in. We tried to fit everything in, but even though we had those extra days, it was like really hard to fit everything in, and you feel very overwhelmed because of how many people are on the boat and how chaotic it is all the time. And so the Oasis, I feel, is more suited for families and large groups that are going together, whereas Enchantment is definitely suited for couples or smaller groups of people, less so for children. I'd say that Oasis is more geared towards children and Enchantment was geared more towards adults. That is just how I feel. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have been planning this one for a long time. I've definitely wanted to compare these two. I felt that they're so polar opposite that it just felt right to compare them and maybe help sway you one way or the other in making decisions for your cruise vacation. Obviously, there are good midway points between these two ships. One is very small, one is very large, drastically different. Definitely go check out Royal Caribbean's website. This is by no means sponsored also. I just really enjoy cruising and I love to talk to people about it. Not an expert, but I think that people that have a mutual love of cruising, you know, it's just really nice to talk to people and talk about your vacations together. Yeah, so we're really looking forward to going on our next cruise. We haven't determined when it's going to be, where it's going to be, or on what ship or what cruise line, who knows, but it's going to be awesome either way. I can't wait to start planning for it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that you click the subscribe button for more vacation videos and then all the other craziness that goes on my channel. Click the little bell down below if you want to know when I upload, and I will see you guys all in my next video. Bye!